Mark. Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to part 3 of the Terra Invicta Guide. Today we're going to be talking about some more complex missions for your agents, as well as the end of the early game and the beginning of the mid-game, technologies you might want to research, and how to prepare for the inevitable arrival of your new alien friends, who will at this point already be sending pretty damn large warships bumbling about the solar system. And also, the most important part during this particular period of the game, the space race. How to enter it, how to win it, and what to focus on. So, before we get into space, we will have a quick look at Earth. By now, you should certainly have conquered America and created a nice and solid power block. I am going to use Europe in this case, as it allows me to demonstrate a couple other interesting points. As during the course of the campaign, I have slowly but surely been taking over the various nations in Europe, and I'll be showing you how to take over a large-scale hostile nation, hostile for the, purposes of this demonstration anyways, as well today, as the Resistance controls Russia. Now, I had no problems with the Resistance controlling Russia until they aggressed upon me in Kazakhstan, and now I feel the urge to punish them for their aggressions. You will also notice, by the way, it's 2026 and Russia is only now beginning to take over Ukraine. Yep, early game military expansions are very slow and very, very, very costly. But let's now talk first and foremost about the space race, shall we? As that is one of the earliest sort of beginning of mid-game, late early game things you're going to worry about. In the tech tree, you will be seeing certain research points beginning to unlock quite early. These are things like mission to the moon, for example, which will eventually lead into things like missions to Venus and missions to Mars. Mars is by far the most important. Now, the moon, 9 times out of 10, isn't going to be worth much. You should send a probe to it as soon as it's unlocked regardless, just to check it out. In this case, there was one good space on the moon, which had a good number of base minerals, but that's about it. I think I've seen precisely one time in all of my playthroughs where the moon actually offered a serious amount of decent varied resources. And the problem is, to go to the moon, you are going to be expending boost, of course, and that boost is far, 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 far better spent on bypassing the moon and traveling directly to the red planet instead, as the red planet will have a lot more varied resources, as you can see here. Instead of having access to only base metals, you've got water, you've got volatiles, base metals, noble metals, and fissiles all on the same spots. So if you're going to be burning a very valuable and slow to accumulate resource anyways, you might as well use it to get where the largest quantities of valuable resources are. To begin with, you simply want to focus on the area that has the most resources in total, and thereafter you want to be slowly claiming new spots as fast as you can, up until the point, of course, where your mission control can no longer handle it. You want to keep about maybe 10 odd points, because you want to maybe build some early navies, although generally speaking, I don't see a huge point in building an early navy. The AI is not going to be building a whole lot of early navies, and you're really not going to be contesting the aliens early game anyways. In the next video, we're probably going to look at some of the navy compositions and how you can technically contest the aliens with only a few rudimentary pieces of technology. All you technically need is interplanetary warship, a 40mm cannon, and some basic missiles, which you can get very early on, but you're gonna need to outnumber the aliens like 3 to 4 to 1 to pull off a successful attack, and you're gonna suffer significant casualties in doing so. And every casualty is, of course, a massive investment in minerals that you could have used to simply expand your mining lead in space instead. It is very rarely worth it to engage in a super early takedown of a space fleet of the aliens, especially as, well, they've got a hell of a lot more resources than you out in the outer solar system. So, when you're heading to Mars, you want to just slowly expand your abilities and grab more and more territories as quickly as you can, even if you can't build everything finished right away. Initially, the soon as you have the boost to do so, you want to send a simple core to Mars, just a little outpost core. That's already going to cost you a lot of boost. Once you've got that up, a power generator, which is probably going to be a fission pile, is next. And only once you've got all of that up, then you can start thinking about sending an outpost mining complex, which is going to cost you a lot of boost. By the time you get this initially, you're probably going to be paying something like 126 odd boost to send out the mining complex from Earth. Now, there are technologies that you can get over the course of the campaign to make this a lot cheaper. Things like nuclear sleds, for example. That will help you because it moves up the speed at which you transport resources. There are technologies to unlock an increase in the investment on boost so you get more of it. And eventually this will get both faster and easier, but to begin with, every ounce of boost is precious, but it is also precious for your enemies, which is why, even if you can't effectively mine it, you simply want to claim territories to begin with. Then you can start becoming reactive. For example, I am running out of water right now. Now, don't worry about running out of any individual resource initially. That's not a problem. You will simply use a small amount of boost and money to send up that resource instead. So if you run out of water, your people on Mars won't simply just die of dehydration. It's just that you will be using some boost and cash to keep money being transported to Mars. So don't worry about that. You're also going to want to build as quickly as you can. Whenever you have the boost, you want to build more, because it's going to take about a solid year to transport anything to Mars. But you want to get started, again, because this is where all of your resource income is going to come from. Meanwhile, whilst you're doing this, you want to, of course, expand your grip on Earth. And to do that, there's a few key researchers that you're going to want. One of the first one, of course, that we've mentioned already is covert operations. So, covert operations come from quantum encryptment, and I'd like to see the whole thing. There we go. Covert operations come from quantum encryptments. It comes at the end of a relatively long research tree, but it finally unlocks your last agent. You want to try and go for this as early as possible, as the sooner you begin leveling them up and getting them experience points, the sooner you're going to have a fully flushed out set of agents. I've come a decent long way in building my harem, of course, of agents right now. The only ones I still want to change out is Ricardo and I believe maybe Matilda here. Everybody else has quick learners and strivers. Ricardo will continue to be my primary persuasion agent for some time yet. Matilda exists primarily to give me a huge amount of administration and in turn a massive amount of organization, which initially will be focused on giving me more boost, because it takes a very long time to build boost on Earth. The quickest and easiest way to get more of it early on is to simply buy organizations that give you more boost. And thus, a character that focuses near exclusively on administration will give you the option to do so, as well also as extending your ability to take over more nations. Mantong Peng here is my purification agent. She's focusing on investigation and espionage so that she can run crackdowns and purges. Now, if you're taking the United States, this is not as important, as you're not going to need to worry about expanding for quite some time. But if you're taking Europe, country by country, oh yeah, you're going to want this very, very early, as each and every one of these nations, from Ireland, Portugal, from Italy to Spain, have all been cracked down and purged of enemy occupations over the course of the last 6 odd years, or 4 odd years. Then we have Oksana Romanova here. She is my backup investigation and espionage character, and also a second administration character. She's a little bit of a jack of all trades here, which is not ideal, but I like having a second character do investigation espionage. You definitely want a secondary investigation character, because you don't want your primary assassin, which uses espionage, to be investigating as well. Whilst your assassin, which in my case, in Mantong Peng, is out killing enemy agents, Oksana is out looking for new targets, and also helping with the crackdown activities. The Fantasy's high administration is also very, very useful, and she, as you will note, is a criminal. So there's a couple of traits you want to worry about now that you're entering the early mid-game, and that is government and it is criminal. Government traits gives you access to governmental organization like the Main Intelligence Directorate or the Secret Intelligence Services, the MI6. These government organizations are usually very powerful. Like the MI6, for example, gives me 2 ops per turn, which is quite good, and 2 investigation, 2 espionage, and 2 security, along with a ton of missions. Now, it's also costing me 50 money a turn, so it is an organization that you want to shed eventually as you continue to level up your characters. But early game, this is fantastic, and you have to be a government character in order to be able to get these organizations. Meanwhile, a criminal character can get access to things like the Hong Kong Triad, for example, or the Taurus organization, or indeed things like the Al-Qaeda or the Yamaguchi-gun, the Yakuza. Now, criminal organizations are usually even more powerful. Look at the Hong Kong Triads, for example. 45 money, 1 influence, 2 ops, 2 espionage, plus 1 administration, which is a very rare and very precious ability granted, and 2 security plus 4 spoils. You will also notice that criminal organizations often give you a bunch of extra money and organization. This is why criminal agents are very, very, very useful. However, do bear in mind that if you have a governmental counselor and a criminal counselor, sometimes they're not going to get along very well, and might create random events that will cost you a lot of resources or lower one of their loyalty scores. Frankly, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a minor hit here and there, and occasionally one of them might go to jail for a bit, but compared to the advantages given, oh yeah, absolutely. Get a government agent and get a criminal agent. Especially if you don't have an agent with the assassinate mission, which is very, very valuable. If you find one with excellent espionage but doesn't have assassinate, make sure they don't have ethical, and then if you give them criminal, you can simply give them something like Kazoo Industries, for example, to give them assassinate. Very, 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 very useful. And then we have Brynja Bukard here. She's not specified in anything at the moment. She was bought primarily because she is a striver, which is that very, very, very rare core ability that gives you a 20% decrease to experience cost instead of the 10 of quick learner. I remember now that I've actually mentioned that wrong because it used to be different. But still, striver, incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. It usually comes at the cost of a fairly advanced age, but it's not a big deal. Agents only start dying of old age at about 70, 80 odd. And by that time, you're gonna have all kinds of technology to increase their age limits, so don't worry. I haven't had a single agent ever die from old age. And again, lowering the cost of new levels to 16 XP is a big deal. And furthermore, of course, it isn't just the ability cost that you're decreasing, you're also decreasing it on things like Affluent and eventually Billionaire, which will give you a lot of extra cash. Another thing you want to be researching quite early on is cybernetic implants right here. Cybernetic implants gives you access to a series of upgrades that will give your characters extra ability points. And again, seeing as how attributes points, seeing with how rare attributes are, that is an absolute no-brainer investment and will eventually lead to even better upgrades, to the point where I think the max you can get is +3 in practically all of your attributes by just spending money. And at this point in the game, money is honestly pretty cheap, so definitely focus on getting that as early as you can as well. Now, we also need to talk a little bit about research in and of itself, as we look at some of the stations that have been built around Earth. Once you've got a couple of mining claims up and running, and you've got all of the mining equipment on the way, you can start thinking about using some boost to fire up some orbital stations. You want orbital stations around Earth because so long as you put them in interface orbit, that is important by the way, when you are funding a platform, make sure it is interface orbit. Then you can use those platforms to build various buildings that boost your research capabilities. As you can see here on the research screen, I have a 79% boost to information-based research, 22% boost to societal research, and a 28% boost to space research. This is coming in part from my counselors and their various organizations, and it's also coming from these space stations. As you can see here, this has a space science lab, giving me a 2.5 stacking bonus for every space science lab I have, and even more importantly, you will see grants a 3% bonus to our investment in mission control point if module is in an Earth interface orbit, up to a maximum of 30%. So, since I have loads of models here, I've got close to that maximum bonus, about I think 25 odd percent. You want to build one of each one of these research systems around Earth in interface orbit as soon as you can, because it simply gives you a massive increase to your national investment pool. A 30% bonus. Again, over the course of a game that runs hundreds of turns, it stacks up quick. As you can see with the European Union here, it is doing pretty damn well. I might need to put a little bit more into GDP just to stabilize things a little bit there, but my economic inequality is nice and low, my cohesion is rising, my education level is superb, and I'm getting a very solid amount of research and boost out of Europe as well. To the point where, in fact, I'm thinking we can decrease our boost investment a little bit now, as I've started building up quite a nice little space economy. Once you've got yourself established, though, the question begins, what are you going to do next? Okay, you've got a nice power bases on Earth, and you've begun to expand into space. Where do you go from here? Well, the initial decision is Earth-based, as it's going to take quite some time for you to build up enough resources to really start wanting to expand into space beyond areas like Mars. So, you want to look around the map and see if there's anything interesting to seize. In this case, America remained unclaimed for a very, very long time. Now, I can see here that the servants have started to take a little bit of inroads into America, which is not great, and I might want to deal with that sooner rather than later. But my primary interest right now is going to be Russia, because if I manage to wrestle Russia out of the resistance control, plus I don't have that many control points at the moment, although I will be getting quite a few from confederations soon, I will have the European supercontinent. It is well on its way now. I am mostly just waiting for the various membership nations to run down their cooldown periods on diplomatic actions with the European Union. And then my unification of EU will be pretty much complete, giving me a nice, big, hefty superpower nation. Getting Russia out of the way is but one step of that, where I can cede some territory, destroy their nuclear arsenal, and maybe consider starting to break them up a little bit, as I probably have no long-term interests in Russia. Now, if you've taken over America, your immediate first interest is going to be China. China is a fantastic secondary country if you begin as a nice solid superpower, because it's going to have one of the best economies out there, and also one of the best investment pool ratings. Now, China is rather difficult to break into due to the sheer size of its population and economy, but again, remember, we start taking over the neighboring nations one by one to give us bonuses in China. If you've already taken over America, it should simply just be a question of time and rolling the dice. Once you've solidified your plans on Earth, you can then start looking out into space again, and your long-term prospects out there in the deep darkness of the void. Don't worry about military conquest just yet. Start instead by locating aliens. You will be getting a series of objectives like kill an alien, track an alien, salvage alien tech over the course of the game. These will also unlock technologies like ferricites, for example. I wonder if I have one available right here. I don't think I do. Oh, there we go. Xenodefoliation. It will be marked with this icon. You want to be doing these, except for xenodefoliation, which is an exception, relatively quickly, because they will unlock new anti-alien missions and will also unlock a powerful, unique organization at some point. Some get it a lot earlier, like Humanity First gets theirs quite early, whereas the Illuminati gets it relatively late, but it's an incredibly powerful one. And you will then need to kill an alien. Killing an alien is not necessarily super simple, although it has actually been made a fair bit easier than it used to. As aliens will have access to organizations like you do, they will have a pretty hefty fucking stat line, which will get a lot worse as the game goes on, believe you me, and will have a whole heaping heck of a lot of missions. But on the bright side, the aliens haven't quite figured out how to enter our atmosphere safely yet, which means that when an alien crashes down, that's it. He can't move like your agents can across the globe instantly. He has to move from country, from area to area to area, very, very, very slowly. This will continue until the aliens manage to set up an alien administration later in game, when they too get access to air travel. Now, how to find an alien? The easiest way is to do what I've done now and build huge numbers of xenolaboratories up in space. I don't know if it's this one, it's probably not. That's a space science lab, that's a materials labs, that is a military lab, that is an information lab. There's the Xenology Lab. So, Xenology Labs will not only give you a big bonus researching Xenos tech, which if you're playing the Illuminati is a great idea, by the way, because you will gain the ability as a unique tech to start mind controlling the aliens. And that includes their megafauna as well, by the way. You can have your very own pet kaiju as the Illuminati. But, more importantly, grants a +1 bonus to alien detection on Earth if the module is an Earth interface orbit to a maximum of +9 across all faction halves. That is a big deal, as it gives you a +9 to detecting all enemy agents constantly. That'll let you spot them pretty damn easily. In fact, I do believe there are 3 operative agents on Earth right now, which I'm pretty sure is also all of them. Right now, the aliens are beginning to investigate humans, so the aliens need to carry out these abduction missions to start expanding their control upon the Earth. Every one they do, they begin unlocking further capabilities, so preferably, you want to be taking care of these agents relatively quickly. However, do bear in mind that this will also piss off the aliens. If you start assassinating their agents, they're going to start burning your shit down. You might be able to get away with one assassination without any serious consequences, but after that, every time you kill one of them, expect them to start burning some of your space stations. And that is simply just a cost of doing business early on. You're not going to be able to defend yourself early on. You're simply just not. Now, there will be things like, if I can remember the name of it, orbital defenses maybe, who knows. I don't know if I remember the name of it. But there is a technology that gives you access to orbital defenses. The orbital defenses are built on your orbital rings or your orbital centers. They will take up 1 slot. I think they're somewhere around here. Even I have not learned this godforsakenly massive tech tree by heart by any stretch of the imagination, and it really could use some improvement, but trust me, there's a way to build defense platforms on these orbital stations. However, your initial platform is going to be a gun, a singular gun. It's not going to stop even a light enemy skirmishing ship. In fact, even super late game, when you have a fully upgraded battle station with fully upgraded lasers, fully upgraded mass drivers, etc., the best you can hope to chase off is a light alien skirmishing fleet. Honestly, I largely consider building defenses to be pointless. I only really do so if I need to discourage the enemy from attacking something, or if I have so many resources that it really doesn't matter anymore. At this early point in the game, frankly, it's pretty affordable to have them burn one of your stations, especially if it allows you to kill one of their agents on Earth, so just pucker up and suck it up to begin with, as it's gonna be a while before you start building functional spaceships able to actually keep them out of your orbits. Now, to begin with, you only want to kill the first alien that you have an objective for. It would be lovely if you could kill a bunch of them, but the consequences are probably going to be too dire, as they will scourge you from the solar system if you piss them off enough, which will put you in a less than ideal situation. So kill the first one and then back off until you've actually got something resembling a fleet up and running. And don't worry about beginning to build military research or military ships right now. Again, you're not going to have anything truly effective for quite some time. Your primary purpose now is going to be to expand your control over the solar system, which after Mars is going to be Venus and then Mercury. Mercury is a planet that has been nerfed multiple times over the course of the game's development cycle. And the reason why Mercury is so good is because it sits very close to the sun. See, the game has 2 primary ways of producing energy, power, which is of course used by all buildings. The first is nuclear fission or fissile materials. By burning a little bit of fissile materials, you generate power. On Mars, you are going to be using fission files almost exclusively because Mars is really far away from the sun, which means that solar arrays just aren't going to work very well. Whereas on Earth, to begin with at least, solar arrays are more than enough to give you all the power you require. Eventually, fusion and fissile materials will outpace solar arrays by a pretty significant margin, though. But that's why Mercury is so gosh darn good. Because, of course, on Mercury, you sit super close to the sun, which means that even 2 or 3 solar power generators can power an entire base, making it fantastic for massive research-intensive research operations. Energy-intensive, there we go. Research operations. It also has some resources, so you might as well mine it, but its proximity to the sun makes it super useful for research. Now, there is a punishment involved in this, and this is radiation. This site is receiving dangerous levels of naturally occurring radiation. Any HAB module built here will have 2 times its normal mass to account for all the shielding necessary to protect fragile electronics and crew members, which means building anything on Mercury is going to be really, really expensive. But it is your best bet for research, so Mercury is your next step, and it will also eventually be the place where you put all of your antimatter farms, but don't worry about antimatter just yet. It's another one of those things you don't really need to worry about right about now. Once you've got all of these basic systems up and running, you can then start considering military technology, which we'll cover in the next one. For now, we're going to see how our assassination mission goes on, and we're going to talk about how to start conquering nations like Russia, for example.
Hunkering down.
Let's see what our little assassin's got going here. She's got decent amount of information. Arms purchase. I'd like to purchase arms. 19.2k. Ouch. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that indeed. She's got a pretty decent chance of pulling this off. Research, augmented learning, high trust economics, graphene batteries. None of this is immediately threatening. Operations centers, research campus. There we go. She's got a decent chance of pulling it off, 69%, and she failed. Which is, of course, going to happen.
Person of interest surveilled.
Now, luckily, I've got a second agent who is carrying out an investigation mission on the F4 Alpha. God help me. On the Xenoform Alpha 4. Jesus. So long as you continue to succeed your investigation rolls, you will continue to keep an eye on the alien. So, next turn, you can simply try again with your assassin until you've nailed the slimy little bastard. Initially, this should be easy enough. Now, later on, you are going to have certain traits, like hard targets, for example. Hard targets means that if you critically fail the assassination attempt, your agent might be killed in return.
Where to?
To circumvent this later on, you will want an agent that has this, the Protect Target ability. You simply click Protect Target on your assassin, like so, and this way, even if she critically fails her mission and would otherwise be killed, she will not, because you have another agent backing her up. Now then, after our botched assassination mission, let's have a look at Russia. Russia's already been cooking for quite a while, as you can see here. Public opinion has been eroded by repeated public campaign missions from my speaky good characters. Once you've built up enough speaky good, all you need to do is select your character with the highest investigation and a crackdown mission. Now, in an economy the size of Russia, your chances are going to be pretty terrible no matter what, but remember, we can always simply pour more influence into it, and a 66% chance, even a 56% chance, is plenty. You will now notice as well that once you get to this level and you have a fair bit of resources floating, you will see the chances increase by increments. So from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64, and it only increases by +1 each time. So in this case, it is far more sensible to spend influence for a 56% chance twice rather than 64 influence for a 10% increased chance. And when you're dealing with nations like these,
Targeting their key
you're
people.
going to be rolling the dice.
Ready for my
Even a
mission.
56% chance is actually really, really goddamn good. I've had to crack points in China with a 3% chance, and it's gonna take you forever, but you will eventually succeed. Again, I repeat for the umpteenth time, this is a very long game. Don't worry about rolling the dice on low probabilities so long as there's nothing more immediately pressing that you need to worry about. And speaking of pressing concerns, there is also the Federation option. So, there is one interesting piece of Federation knowledge that you're going to need to know if you want to unify nations, and that is, again, the democracy score, which I don't recall if I mentioned it, but it's a very important piece, so allow me to repeat myself just in case. If you are a nation like the US, for example, at 7.5, and you're trying to integrate a nation like Norway at 9.3, you'll get an error message whenever you try to do so because your democracy score is too low. You need to be within 1.5 points of the nation you're attempting to unify with to actually capture it. You also need a non-hostile territorial claim on the country's capital. So, for example, I've got Canada here. Canada is in the European Federation, which simply allows me to steal a bunch of their points and use Canada as my private slush fund because, well, fuck the Canadians. But I can't actually confederate Canada, and you can tell who you can and cannot confederate via the Relations tab. By hovering over Canada here, you will see unification requirements with the European Union fail. Why? European Union has a non-hostile claim on Canada original capital region, Toronto, Ottawa. Fail, because I don't have a claim on Toronto, Ottawa. I do have one on Georgetown, however, and I will probably want to cede that territory to the European Union sooner rather than later, because why not? Why should Canada get to own this thing? I don't think they should. There is also going to be cooldowns on your actions. For example, Portugal left the European Union before I was able to take it over, which means that I now need to wait until the 31st of May to rejoin it into the European Union again. And then eventually, after about a year's time in the European Union, I can unify with Portugal, bringing it into the country at large. There are also going to be cases where certain nations will only have certain areas that will be within your sphere of influence, like Sevastopol here, for example, which has a claim on European Union and Ukraine. In these cases, once you take control of the nation, you can actually make it cede individual pieces of territory to the larger entity, which 9 out of 10 times, unless you're trying to build up the other nation, is a very good thing. So, that is what you're going to want to do in the beginning of the middle game of Terra Invicta. Next video, we are going to talk about the military, and there's going to be a lot to talk about the military, as the game has a pretty damn complex ship designer, and honestly, this is where one of the game's problems steps into the picture yet again, in that a lot of military technology is simply just worthless, honestly. 90% of your laser weaponry are terrible. 80% of your coil guns and projectile weapons are terrible. If you're going to fight the aliens, really, only the top 10-20% of your weapon systems are ever going to be worth anything. And of course, if you haven't played the game before, you're not going to know any about this. And certain weapon systems like plasma, it sounds good, but in my experience, plasma is only worthwhile in very specific circumstances, and even then, honestly, just more mass drivers I found to just be vastly superior, honestly. but there is a way to test your builds and your designs, which I will show you next time, as it will save you a lot of resources. Until then, I have been Arch, yet again. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.